How do people with lots of kids actually afford it? My boyfriend wants like 5 kids someday, so I'm researching what that would mean for our future. Most stuff I look at says it's over $10,000 a year per child, hundreds of thousands to raise a kid to maturity. Meanwhile, I see people living in low-income situations, minimum wage jobs, single-parent families, etc. that have a ton of kids. I know someone with 4 kids and they just work at Subway part-time. My own mum almost never worked and she seemed able to comfortably raise my brother and I. But then I also constantly see posts on Reddit about how people here are living paycheck to paycheck, won't ever have kids, or own a house because of the economy and so on. Are these people with huge families just living off welfare? Does raising kids actually cost way less than what these sites say? How the frick do people afford kids? Answer. People just manage to scrape by one way or another, being frugal and using government support or going into massive debt. Everyone has their own story. Thanks for everyone that replied. Any weird assumptions, concerns about what I'm thinking or what I plan to do with my life are also great. Appreciate the classic Reddit response. I was number 4 of 5 in a family with a shoestring budget. Here were the things that I remember most. My parents had to pick and choose their financial commitments. I couldn't tell you anything about any children's TV show from the early 2000s, but I could tell you about every stick figure flash game ever made, because my parents thought that internet was a better investment than cable. My mother is a jack of all trades. She made most of my sisters' dresses, cooked all our meals, and performed or oversaw basically all home repairs and remodels. Almost all the artwork and decorations in my house were made or heavily altered by her. Rather than buying expensive bedspreads, she often bought flannel and stitched it up into warm blankets and crocheted Afghan comforters for us. My dad almost never got new clothes while I was growing up. He wore the same green sweatshirt from college until it had holes in the elbows, and he wore the same sport coat to anything formal or semi-formal for probably 25 years. He probably still has a couple pairs of jeans from the 1990s that he doesn't fit into anymore. My mum didn't get new clothes very often either, but my dad's fashion choices were a little more memorable. Anything we did buy had to last a long time. When my parents bought a new minivan, long after the old one needed to be replaced, they got a used car with low mileage that was babied and maintained so that it would last another 200,000 plus miles. That bit about cars is the best advice for anyone to save money. Take care of it, and almost any car can go past the 200k mark. I still daily drive a Jeep built in 1988, and it has cost me less than $200 year after owing it for 15 years, including the initial purchase. Cheap cars are just as good as expensive cars if you know what to look for. They all have parts that break, and cheap cars typically have cheaper to replace parts. Even high maintenance is cheaper than a new car. Replacing the engine block could run you $2,000, but a new car could easily run $18k and have an engine problem after the warranty runs out. This what I tell myself about my 91 Chevy G20 van. I'm not sinking money into an old broken vehicle. I'm working on a classic car restoration that will be done in 10 years. Uncomfortably. I am second in a family of 5. There was credit card debt, hand-me-downs, thrift store trips and food stamps. I was raised on 3 meals, ramen, mac and cheese, and spaghetti. My parents were pretty terrible with money, so any college help or anything as an adult was out of the question. Yeah, one of 8 children from a mixed marriage here. Freaking terrible. But you had the bitchin' trip to Hawaii where you guys got that lost totem. I'm hearing that noise. I think it was Peter made when the tarantula was on his chest. So were you born before or right after the moon landing? I also came from a family with 5 kids. Neither of my parents had beyond a high school education. And one of my siblings is special needs and needed a lot of extra medical care and additional classes, especially when younger. But we did okay. My dad worked full-time and my mum stayed at home after kid 3 came along. We lived in a decent home in a low cost of living area. My parents never bought new cars. We never went out to eat. Maybe the occasional McDonald's run after grocery shopping with mom. We never bought lunches from school. We took one family vacation a year which was fun, but nothing fancy. We definitely never went on airplanes. We bought clothes from Kohl's and JCPenney, and younger ones often got hand-me-downs. My dad cut my hair until I was 16 and started paying for my own haircuts. Dad did 90% of car and home maintenance. All kids had summer jobs by the time we were 15. We didn't have cable TV and didn't have video games. We didn't play any extracurricular sports that weren't through the school, as it would be too expensive. No summer camps or anything like that. I did have awesome homemade, family dinners every night and clothes that fit, and a parent always at home. I did take a vacation every year. I had a yard to play in. Besides my parents being way too religious, my upbringing was fine. Hell, my neighbors had 10 kids, all the same mum and dad, and they did fine. Because the dad had a decently successful construction business. Live where shit is cheap, get a mediocre white collar job, live frugally, and exist in the 80s and you're good. I'm the youngest of 5. My parents had 3 biological children and adopted my older brother and I. I remember coupon cutting as a family and very rarely going out to eat. We didn't take vacations unless it was camping. Every one of us kids got summer jobs as soon as we entered high school, and that became our spending money. My parents paid for food, home, the necessities, but if I wanted to go have dinner with friends, that came from my summer money. It's important to me to mention how amazing my parents were. I did not know we were poor. I just thought every family lived frugally. My parents never let their financial stresses show. That's awesome. Wish my parents could have been more like the last part. As a kid helping my dad flip houses or fixing his apartments, I'd constantly have to hear about our financial hopelessness and the consequences of his bad decisions. Then when I came home, it was basically repeated by my mom, and it was all you need to help more around here. Your dad is gonna die and we could lose the house. Like, thanks mom. I'm 16 working another job, and just got done working another full 8-hour shift to be told I'm not doing enough and feel like shit. Oh, and my siblings all moved out already. That makes me sad. No kid should have to carry that stress or fear. There's a high school girl who works at my restaurant whose mum makes her pay gas to get to work and part of rent. It makes me so damn angry, so I tip her a little extra every time we work together. Parents should let kids be kids. There's a 17-year-old girl I know who worked at a restaurant whose mum lost her job, so she had to drop out of high school and pay the entire family's rent. And yeah, her mum went to the high school to check her out permanently herself. Girl was a senior. Hello. One of 5 kids here. Dad worked days to pay the mortgage. Mum worked nights as a waitress and bartender to pay the utilities and other bills. Grandpa babysat just about every weekday from 4 PM to 7 PM because of the overlap for 14 years. The only sports or teams we were able to be part of were the ones provided by the school, because we couldn't afford it if we had to pay for it. Vacations were an annual camping trip with an aunt and uncle who were well off and didn't have kids of their own. Restaurants were only for special events with the extended family. I can only remember the 7 of us going to a restaurant once, to Swiss Chalet. From the age of 13 until I left for college at 17, I was an unpaid babysitter, as was my older sister before me. I have no kids and went through therapy to try to get past thinking that having kids would be the worst thing ever based on how horrible it was to be an unpaid caregiver to out of control kids without enough supervision or attention from our parents. I'm not sure it worked though. Number 4 of 6 here. My younger siblings were close in age, so I was the last babysitter sibling. They still tell me how mean and awful I was. I was 11. They were 6 and 7 and bit. They threw shoes. They screamed and destroyed things and had no discipline. Then they'd tattle on me to my overworked parents as soon as they got home and I'd be in trouble. They remember none of it and I was against children for the longest time. Now everyone is impressed with how I can control a room of screaming children, or how patient and good I am with my nephew. These ones don't bite. I could do this or say LOL. Same here. I hope you're doing better now. My mum and grandma always tell me when you have kids, you find a way. I don't believe it, though, because I have dogs and sometimes I struggle making sure they have food and treats, especially around bill time. Couldn't imagine having to add school, clothing, more food, uniforms of some kind, etc. Having a child you can't afford is not a victimless crime. There's a case in my city of a family who always wanted a son, so they kept having children. They had 6 daughters before having 1 son. Father was doing a low-income job and died suddenly. It's sad on all levels. That's just so selfish. People who keep trying for a boy tend to be incredibly selfish and indifferent toward the suffering of their daughters. Pretty much every couple that I've met who said that they were trying for a son could not care less about the daughters that they have in their situation. A big cost of childcare is daycare. If siblings are old enough to watch little ones, then the cost goes down. Or sometimes people with big families have extended family to watch kids too. Hell, I'm pretty solid middle class and I'm living near my parents on purpose so they can help watch my kids while I'm at work. Daycare, even shitty daycare, is freaking expensive. Yeah, I'm spending $12,000 per year in daycare, which is roughly average for the area. My co-worker spends $4,000 a month. I almost fell out of my chair. I'd undercut the shit out of whomever they have right now. $3K a month. I don't even make $3K a month. But daycare costs as much as my college education. Oldest of 5 here. Do not ever. Misery for all. Did your parents hand off babysitting and shit to you? Sure, but that was no big deal. I suppose a lot of the issues stem from who my parents are. But who knows? Maybe trying to figure out how to afford and have the energy for 5 kids is what broke them. Me and the youngest are also 12 years apart. If you're gonna do it, 5+ kids, do it 2 years or less apart. Get all the babies out while you have the energy to keep up with them physically and emotionally. I'm 31 now, and I can remember my parents arguing about money since I was 6. They still struggle to this day. It doesn't help 3 of my siblings are still 100% dependent on them. But who knows how much of that is their fault and how much of that is my parents' inability to raise adults. It's complicated really, but would be a completely different life if there were only 2 or 3 of us. I think my parents would have turned out better. And we would have to. I love them all, but damn we're mental. I am also the oldest of 5, mother's side, complicated, and 12 years separate me and the youngest. I'm 34. Reading this is closer to home than many other comments. I 100% understand. Damn we're mental. 2. 5 of us are 100% dependent on my dad. Mum finally died in December. Medical woes she let get out of control. 2 others depend heavily on mum before she passed, but they're finally trying things on their own and I'm the ringleader trying to teach them all to be normal functioning human beings. It's freaked up. Oh wow, my heart breaks for you and your family. My best to you, and if you ever need to vent, send me a message anytime. Us ringleaders need to stick together. Subscribe and click the notification bell to get the best of British.